and welcome back to the Collin Cadmus Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Lucas Wilson. Lucas graduated from Indiana State University in 1997 and then spent the first 13 years of his career in the auto business, leading operations and sales for several Ford dealerships, until eventually pivoting into the tech space in 2009 when he started in sales at AngiesList. Since then, he climbed the executive ladder across a long list of companies, including Monster, Main Street Hub, Homebase, ProSites, and many more, until landing his most recent and current position as CEO at Signpost. I've interviewed many founders who started out as salespeople, but this is the first time speaking to someone who has been hired into a CEO position that comes from a sales background. I've known of Signpost for as long as I've been in sales because we used to hire from the same pool of talent in New York City, and when I worked at Doctor.com, we actually subleased one of our offices from Signpost. So I can say firsthand that they have always had a reputation of having a strong sales culture, and it doesn't surprise me, they eventually hired a CRO to be their CEO. Needless to say, I'm excited to get his thoughts on all that's changing in B2B sales, and more specifically to dive into what it's like to go from leading a sales organization to leading an entire company. Before we get started, if you're watching on YouTube, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave us a comment if you have questions or feedback. If you're joining us from Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please drop us a review and let us know what you think of the episode. This is much appreciated. And I actually just checked on YouTube. It's quite depressing. We get a lot of views there, but 90% of the views come from people who are not subscribed. So if you click that button and throw on the alert, you'll know about all the new episodes as they drop. So appreciate if you do that. But without further ado, let's dive in and get his thoughts. Luke, thanks for joining me and welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. And I am very excited to be here. Love the conversation we're getting ready to have.
Likewise. I don't remember how I saw you pop up. It was somewhere on LinkedIn, but I saw CEO at Signpost. I said, I don't recognize his name. And I couldn't remember, who the founder or whatever was. I don't even know if they were still involved, like when I knew them. But,
Right.
As soon as I saw it, I looked at your profile and I always want to see who I'm like, if I'm interacting with someone, I'm like, well, what did they do? What did they learn? What do they know? Do they know anything I want to know? And I saw, just your experience of just sales leadership, and you've got at least a decade on me. And then you're in a CEO role. So I'm assuming this is a W-2 CEO role, like you got hired into a full-time job. And obviously, I know this exists, right? Like, it's not the first time I've seen it. It's the first time having a conversation with someone who's doing it. And it's something I've thought of, in the sense that, many times you're in a company, you're leading sales, and you might have an inkling that I could do the CEO's job, right? And I was cocky enough to think that I could found my own company, and still someday maybe I will. I did try after I left Doctor.com and learned brutally how much I should really respect these founders, how hard it really is. But I do think it's probably two totally different jobs to found a company versus to be a CEO of a company. And then also, I think it's also separate at different stages, right? When the company's past a certain point and you're coming in and it's not maybe about hyper growth, it's about really expansion and sustainability, and all the priorities probably start to change, and there's different things that are important. So there's just so many questions I have. I want to obviously make sure that we dive into really the topics that there's kind of two things I want to do here. One is I want to cover some of the topics that are hot in the industry that I've been asking everyone, and you're going to have probably interesting takes on this because you've seen it all. I mean, you started about 10 years before I did in sales, so you've got an even earlier foundation of sort of seeing this evolution. So I'm curious to get your thoughts, particularly because most of the people I've been talking to are sort of in my range there, whereas you've got that extra decade, and I wonder if it gives you a little more sort of pattern recognition to maybe see what's on the horizon here. So without further ado, let's dive in. And then, as we get through these first few questions here on the sales stuff, I want to dive into what it's like to be a CEO and sort of what lessons you've learned there, what challenges you're up against. I know you just said you're traveling back from Ecuador. So, you're on the move, you're building the brand, still establishing a global presence, it sounds like. So we'll dive into that. But before we do, let's jump into the first topic, which is outbound sales. Now, I changed the way I'm asking this question because for the last maybe 15 to 20 episodes, I've asked it a very specific way, and we've gotten so many very consistent answers that I actually think it's just redundant at this point. And so I want to sort of dig into the next phase. And so the way I was asking the question is, what's broken with B2B outbound sales and how did we get here? Now, I think just to sort of recap, we've had mostly the same answers. There's a lot of talk of automation, a lot of talk of salespeople getting away from the fundamentals, relying a little bit too much on tools and, email cadences and all that sort of stuff. And so it's a very clear trend of that. And then there's the topic of like, it's just so much volume. We're automating everything. So the people on the receiving end are sort of, numb to it, or they're getting better at blocking these things, or they don't answer their phone anymore. Yeah. So I think we've sort of, and assuming you agree on that, if you don't, feel free to chime back. Okay. So we agree on that. So I changed the question to, is outbound sales broken? Which we just sort of agreed on at least some of that. But I want to add the second part of the question is, what's changed and what's working?
Yep.
I think that's a better direction to go in, so we can actually start to help people figure out what they should be doing. Correct. So I'll leave it to you, wherever you want to go with that.
No, I couldn't be more aligned. It is fundamentally broken. And I will tell you, from the old man with the gray hairs in my beard, I've seen this change from when there was just a ton of fundraising, right? And we were the ones at Main Street Up. I was hiring 50 reps every single month. I was at 7th and Brazos, 8th and Brazos, I think. And we were adding a floor every month to that building, right? And just hit the gong, have the kickoff huddle in the morning. Yeah. Let's freaking go, right? What I think has fundamentally changed is we're all having to be operationally efficient now. There is a lot of fatigue on the other end of whoever we service and whoever we sell, because they have more information than ever. Right. I say this about like my children's generation. There is more information in the palm of their hand on an iPhone than I had at 19 years old going to college. Right. Like it just doesn't, they literally, you have 8-year-old kids who can Google and research far more than I learned. I was going to library reading encyclopedia. Like that's how old I am. Right. And a lot of kids don't even know what an encyclopedia is today.
I joke about it. I say, like, I remember hanging out. We had this little clubhouse in my backyard that, we turned a shed into a little hangout spot when I was younger. And it sort of continued all through high school. That was our spot. We would sort of just go there and get away from the parents. But we'd have debates all the time. We'd be back there just shooting the shit, talking about whatever. But I remember, like, when we got into debates, if we really couldn't, like, squash it, it was on Monday morning, we're asking Mrs. Jones in science class. That was it. Like there was no pull out ChatGPT. So very different world. And on the sales side, we've sort of lost a lot of our value there as the gateholders of info.
Right. And so what I think, and I think you've seen me post some of this on LinkedIn, I am a victim of this. I get so many ridiculous outreaches that you can tell they're just a spray and pray. Right. Just hope to goodness that somebody sets a hook on this old boy and he'll respond to me. Right. Yeah. So what I think has changed about sales is you actually, once again, it's come full circle. You actually have to be a good salesperson again. Yeah. You actually have to understand how to ask questions. You actually have to understand how to slow down and listen. And I would say more than ever, and this has probably been a frustration of mine for the last decade, you have to freaking work again. I'm sorry, like I live in Austin. Austin's the king of I'm going to work a 4-hour day on an 8-hour paycheck. I get it. I understand it. If I was a salesperson, I would do it as well. I got it. But it's not that game anymore, right? Like it's you are going to have to grind, and it's going to have to include social selling. It's going to have to include dialing the phone. I'm sorry, you don't want to make 35 dials, right? That's what you want. It's going to take 100. You got to cut through the noise. But also now you need to be doing professional development. You need to be researching. You need to be making yourself better. You need to be taking advantage of the free tools that are online that make you a fundamentally more valuable connection, right? And so I see a lot, and it's why I was so excited to talk about this with you, is everybody has a different take. And part of it benefits their solopreneur world, and I get that, right? But the other part is kind of just their view, and we all have them. I think it's a combination of everyone's view. You do have to be doing more social selling. You do have to be educating yourself and making connections and making sure that you're smarter about what you do. And guess what? Old guys like me are now coming back around where you're saying you also have to grind. You've got to grind. Stop telling me that 50 dials and all the emails you want to send are it. I was that guy 25 years ago at AngiesList that told my boss, Tom Holbert, I send money emails and I got the close that shuts everything down. And he's like, okay, dial the phone, please. Dial the freaking phone, Luke. And then I went to the gym on campus and I ate some lunch. I walked over to another house and BS'd with a buddy. And then I couldn't understand why I was behind, didn't have any pipeline because I wasn't dialing the phone. So I could rant and rave, but I really do think the game's different. different. And I think you have to adapt and adjust now. You have to use the technology. You have to be able to make yourself better, but you also have to be more of a grinder now than you've ever been.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And I wonder if like is it more of a grinder than like I was or you was, or is it that we shifted away from it and it's coming back? I mean, it's probably just all over the board. And I hear people talking about like, is cold calling dead? And, I went through sort of a phase of thinking it was dying. And what I've come to realize is that for certain verticals it might be dying, for certain ICPs it might be dying. Like I'm a guy who's got my phone on do not disturb all day long. I don't turn it off that unless I'm expecting a call. Like if I ordered food or someone's coming and I'm expecting a call, then I'll turn it off. But otherwise, I'm just going to look and see if you text me or leave a voicemail. And that kind of proves, though, that it's still not totally dead because I will check the voicemail. I will look at the transcript. And if you can hit me with something compelling, like maybe I will call you back, or at least I'll go check out your website or something like that. So I agree with you there. And I mean, giving me flashbacks, like when I was at Single Platform, we had to do 200 minutes of talk time a day.
Yeah.
It was full cycles, so they didn't tell us how many calls we had to make. It was about minutes.
You got to talk.
But we had other benchmarks, for how many meetings had to be set. And we would we had hard phones on our desk. They were connected to Salesforce, but we had the hard phone there with the headset wired in. And our management team would literally walk around. Now, this could sound like it was negative if you don't know the culture, but it was so much fun there that this was okay. But they would walk around, and if you were not on a call, they would just press redial on your phone.
Yeah.
And it would just start ringing. Like it was just like, why aren't you talking? Why aren't you talking? Right? Like just go, 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 go. So yeah, I mean, you gave me flashbacks to that. And some people will refer to this as like boiler room culture and all this sort of stuff. And like, I think they get confused there. I think like boiler room is like ripping people off, lying to people, selling shitty stocks. But like working your face off is not boiler room. Working your face off is just sales, at least as well as I know it.
And it's the case. And I apologize for cutting you off. It's also. Nothing is ever going to replace catching the right person at the right time. Right. So like I have literally told people no 1,000 times. Yeah. I have a meeting with my team. We dive into a problem that I wasn't aware of. And now I'm like, I got to solve this. And that person calls again after I've I have literally told them no 15 times. Right. Yeah. And it's just the timing. Main Street Hub was probably my biggest experience on this is we recycled leads and everybody hated it. They're like, this guy's told us no 30 times. They called him and they closed him that day. Right. Like
same thing.
I don't think nothing's going to replace that. Nothing. Now you have to be a little smarter. And like even I won't use the name of the brand we use to dial the phone. Even we have to get new numbers because if we make more than X number of calls in certain minutes, they mark us as spam. So like there are ways you have to get around it, but nothing beats the cold call at the right time. And you've dialed this guy 10 times. He has awareness. Google literally has an algorithm for this that a person who's getting ready to buy has to see you across 7 different mediums. Like you have to make sure that they have you. You've reached out to them on LinkedIn. You've been on their website. You've sent them a text message. You've sent them an email. You've called them. I just don't think anything's going to replace that. Nothing is going. We're looking for the easier way as salespeople. We always do, myself included. I've looked for the easier way for 30 years. I've never quite found it, but we're always looking for it. And I think now more than ever, because of the fundraising and capital environments that we're in, it reverts all the way back to, yes, you do have to be smarter. I worked for a gentleman that I've never forgotten this. I used the phrase, I work smarter, not harder. And he had a visceral reaction to that because he said, I fundamentally believe we can work smarter and harder and we get better results. Right. And it stuck with me because I was embarrassed that I said that because I was really just meaning it kind of goofy. Right. It's just joking. But I was a CRO.
We hear it and it makes sense until you hear someone say work smarter and harder, you can actually achieve more. Yeah.
Correct. And I was a CRO at that time and he was one of the founders and it kind of embarrassed me, but I have held on to that because I'm like, no, you're right. You're fundamentally right. We can work smarter and harder. So I'm sorry to kind of talk down that road, but that's really what I think is changing in sales in general.
Yeah, this is all gold. And I think for context, or let me sort of clarify here too, just to confirm, I know like I started Single Platform, we were selling to small, medium businesses, restaurants, storefronts where they basically have to answer the phone because you could be a customer. I think that's been most of your resume too,
all of it.
Right?
All of it.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I'm actually passionate about it. I think it is literally the most underserved market in the world. And I'll tell you why. first of all, it's 99% of our businesses in the US. So
Yeah.
there's number one. But here's what happens. And this is the journey I've taken. You have a really great service for that core market, right? Your product rocks it for them. You gain a sizable investment. The first thing the VC says to you is, how do we take this up market?
Yeah,
Right. And
yeah.
so you immediately get away from the customer that you were serving, and they have to go find another tool over time because now your tool doesn't really fit them. You've built
Yep.
features that don't work for them. So I first of all, I come from a background of small to medium business. I grew up in 4
Same.
dealerships. That's all I did my life, right? And so then I saw my grandfather do it, saw how proud he was of his Ford dealership in this
Was that
tiny
family business? I was wondering how you got into that.
I've
Yeah.
had a combination of both, worked for some big groups, but then also the family side. And I saw how proud he was in that small little community to be a part of that community, right? To
Yeah.
offer that service, how important his name was on the building to him, and how
Yeah.
it was really funny to me because as the guy, the name on the building, he still wore a service uniform that had his name on it, right? Like he's like, look, I'm a worker. That's what I do, right? So
Yeah.
I wouldn't do anything else. This is what I'm very passionate about. I wouldn't be good at enterprise sales. I wouldn't be good at, I know this niche of it. And after this long of a time, this is my sweet spot. That's where I plan to stay.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've closed some enterprise deals along the way mixed in there. So
Yep.
like I have as well. And I just know I don't really enjoy them. Like they're a huge pain in the neck. They take way too long. And I don't really like putting in that much time without knowing if it's going to work out. Like it's just so risky. I don't mind doing it in addition to everything else I'm doing, like have some mixed in there. It's a little bit of fun and like you're kind of always working on that 1 or 2 deals. But when you sort of take that big push to like, we're going to change our strategy to go enterprise, it's probably the biggest risk that is so under I'm using the wrong word here, but they're not risk assessing properly, right?
Correct.
They're so often just pushing
Correct.
into that. Yeah. And it often blows up in your face. And what happens is you'll hire salespeople and you are still in the mindset of the SMB world and they get 6 months into it and you're like, what's going on here? You've produced nothing. And they're like, what do you mean? I've produced X number of pipeline. And you're like, well, that doesn't matter. And you're like,
Not a deal.
they're like, well, this is enterprise, bro. Like you better get ready to wait a while. Right. Like,
Yeah.
And then by month 9, they fire them. And then they bring in a new enterprise salesperson who comes in and works their pipeline, closes it, looks a little bit better. And like, it's always like sort of that game. So yeah, I'm with you there. And yeah, in the SMB storefront space, I'm very confident in saying now, and I've sort of teetered back and forth on this for a while, but the cold calling is not going away, and it's because they have to answer the phone for their customer, and as long as they have to answer the phone for their customer, they're going to answer it for you, and you're going to figure out how to get through a percentage of the time. So unless that becomes illegal to do, that's the only way that it's going away, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. So we're totally aligned on this. This is as exciting as I thought it would be. We've had such a similar run, and you've just got years on me, which fires me up because I want to hear all about where you're at, and you stuck with it too, which is exciting because kind of to what we were just talking about there. Like a lot of people want to move up market,
Right?
And oftentimes I would say the reason they want to do that is they think they need to do it to make more money. But I don't know what your W-2s look like, but I would imagine you've done nothing but earn more money throughout your career. Yeah,
absolutely. I go back to this. The only way you make more money is if you provide more value.
Yeah.
Right. So even today, I call our churn customers a Signpost. I'm involved. People find me on LinkedIn. They find my cell phone number out there. They call when we drop the ball. And I will tell you, hands down, I value and respect our people in the public sector. I value and respect our people in the enterprise world. But I fundamentally get no greater joy than every time I pick up the phone and talk to a customer. Right. And it's been that way. It doesn't matter what company. I feel like I serve them. They need this. Like I could go 4 hours and tell you why our customers at Signpost need us to do our job. Right. They need us to deliver for them. Right. You don't get that anywhere else than SMB sales. You just don't. You don't get that kind of connection. When I talk to a customer, they're heated because they've had to reach out to me, right?
Yeah.
But why they're mad is because they're like, dang it, I'm counting on you to do your job. Like I need you to do this. So I don't think you get that in the enterprise section. And it's why I firmly believe cold calling is not dead, because those people need us to rock it for them. And they're expecting us to be better at it than what we have been. They're expecting us to be better.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. And I got sort of the same, very much the same feedback from my first VP sales, Adam Liebman, who's still running a cold call team. They're selling into law offices.
Nice.
And so that's one vertical that I haven't really sold into. We tried to at single platform. The product wasn't really that suited for them, but they were always tough to cold call. But even they're still making progress because they will answer the phone. That's the thing. If you get them to
Yes.
answer the phone, like you're in business. So,
Yes.
okay, I want to get your thoughts on this next topic, and I'm not sure where you'll want to go with this. Maybe you want to talk about past experiences. Maybe you want to talk about Signpost, but it's the topic of growth at all costs versus sort of this new hyper efficient or profit, or I shouldn't say new, but profitable alternative. I say new just because I think the strategy has sort of changed abruptly because of COVID for many companies. Money got expensive, interest rates, all this sort of
Right.
stuff. But what has been your experience there? I imagine, obviously, we're at Main Street Hub. I know they were pretty much growth at all costs,
Right.
like hiring like crazy, spend or spend $2 to make a dollar, that type of thing. What is your thoughts on what's going on there, and I guess sort of how are you managing that at Signpost, wherever you want to go on that topic?
No, I've got such a broad perspective on this because it's actually part of the CEO journey as well, right? So
Yeah.
I would tell you I had a very arrogant approach to this as a VP of sales or CRO, and I have a
Mm.
legs kicked out from underneath me, humbled approach as a CEO, right?
Yeah.
So I one
Because
growth
you're
at all costs.
managing the whole balance sheet now.
Though that
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
and so I would also say this: we as salespeople are very arrogant. We all are because we just like look. Even in the car dealership days, I'd be like, just stay back there and count the money. We will keep the lights on. Go
Yeah.
count the money, right?
Yeah.
What you start to realize over time is, yeah, that's great. That's awesome. But you know what? You have to do it profitably. The days of Main Street Hub, which I had a phenomenal time there. I learned so much from those two founders and the people I was associated with. Like I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. But it fundamentally was not a good return. It was not. The unit economics were not good on that business,
Yeah.
right? And though as expensive a capital market as we're in now, no one will fund that type of growth anymore. You've
Yeah.
got to pay attention to your bottom line. Now I'll tell you where I've screwed up, and I really. It's a balance, right? Because then I want to pull back and I look at it as a CEO. My responsibility is to make sure that everybody's paycheck cashes and they have a long-term career with me, right? I have a lot of great people from my time in SaaS serving SMBs that have said, Luke, I will come and make less money and come to Signpost, right? Because Signpost is when I joined, it was very much in a transition stage. They were selling enterprise level software to SMBs. That didn't work. They had an enterprise sales process. That didn't work. We've had to completely redo the go-to-market, right? In
The
saying
products
that,
evolved too, I think,
product
right?
has evolved a ton. We've actually
Because it
gotten
was
good.
very much like single platform back in
It
the day, I
was.
think. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was. What we've done is transition to being good at one thing, and we can get into that here later on. I'm passionate about just being good at one thing. There's a lot of sexy things you can go do. Just be good at one thing, right? But
Actually, can I pause you for a quick second?
yes,
Because that's a very interesting thing. And I don't disagree with it. By the way, I wholeheartedly agree with it because I wholeheartedly agree with it. What I disagree with is what I've been hearing a lot of people saying lately, and I see this come from the VC world, is they're saying everyone has to evolve into a platform. And I think it's often the wrong play. And you see this happen with like companies like Gong and whatnot. And I don't want to say it's the wrong play for them, but from the customer experience, you often sign up for something because you like the one thing they do. But then they want to bake in 50 other things to it. And you're like, well, I already kind of have those things. And now you want to charge me 5X. And like,
right,
now there's all this duplication. And it actually they do it when they want to go enterprise,
correct.
but then they sort of isolate everyone that has gotten them to where they're at
Yeah.
by doing that. Is that why you like sort of the simplicity of like, let's just nail this thing?
Mine's simpler. And so I was a student athlete. I'm going to take a student athlete approach to this, right? You have to stop caring what the VC wants you to build. And and that's going to put me in a bad spot. But I'm also going to tell you this. Most VCs will tell you, stop caring about what I want you to build, right?
Yeah.
I have a fiduciary duty to create shareholder value. I have to at my position. It's not a lot of things that VP of sales and CROs think about, right? They if you listen to a lot of the content people out there, they're like, hey, be about yourself, be about you. I can't anymore. I can't. I have a fiduciary duty, right? But the other thing I have is a customer duty. And you have to build what your customers want. This is my focus on. I was actually given this advice from a mentor who he said, look, just do one thing, dude. You're going to have all these distractions, all these different things. They're going to want all these different product features. Part of Signpost misgivings over the years, they built what they wanted to build, not what the customer wanted. Right. And I will tell you, I'll use Signpost as the analogy. You know what our customers, when I started calling all the cancellations, do you know the one thing they care about? Answer the phone. They just care about answering the phone. They don't
Yeah.
even care if you have a software platform. They don't even like, we used to email them their calls, right? They're like, okay, good. That's great. Right now we have a really comprehensive platform and they love it. But when they cancel, it's because we didn't do the one thing.
Mm.
Right. And so the same founder that challenged me on the work harder and smarter deal, he and his partner used to say, we have to earn the right for them to continue to pay us.
Mm.
And that's why I stick on the one thing. It's hard enough to scale a business in this world, and you can blow through money adding platform pieces to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, you burn through money. I'm burning through money just keeping service of my customers, right? Like that,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if your focus gets too crazy, you just don't do anything good and you let your customer down. And ultimately now, if you let your customer down, you now have a problem with the VC as well, right? So like it all interconnects and comes back.
It just compounds. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a really tough call there because like once you go the platform route, I think the reason it happens is usually because there's so many copycats that came into the
Yes.
space and they want to now be different. But why not just be the best, right? Sometimes that's the right way to do it, right?
So how I'd like to be different is we offer better service.
Yeah.
Right. So sure, you can go. So if you think about what I do, it's very remedial at Signpost, but it was remedial at Main Street Hub. At Homebase, who I think John Waldman is a superhero in my mind of how he treats his customer and what he looks at to scale his business. But he does time tracking. He does payroll. He didn't reinvent anything. Right. Like, and I'm not minimizing what Homebase does at all, but they didn't do anything sexy.
Yeah.
It is the exact same thing that people have been doing for the last 30 or 40 years. They
Yep.
do it better from a customer standpoint. They offer
Yep.
better service. They listen better. Those are the things I'd like to be known as, especially at Signpost. I would rather you choose us because you can get your calls answered. You can get a messaging hub. You can get those things elsewhere. But you know what? You count on us to do it better than everybody else. And that honestly, to me, I think that's one, it's more rewarding. And at the end of the day, it has to be more rewarding for you, right? You have to
Yeah.
wake up and think, man, I love what I do. Well, that comes with part of it, but also your business has to be successful. If you rock it for your customers, you'll always be successful.
Boom. I love it. I couldn't agree more. What are your thoughts on what's going on with sales quota attainment? Now,
Yep.
the industry average that we're seeing all over the place is like less than 40% quota attainment across the board. I don't think it's always been that low. I think that's sort of just continuously gotten worse over the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years. I think a lot of it's just VC pressure. I mean, I've ranted my opinions at nauseum here on the podcast, but just to give you a sense, like I think a lot of it mostly comes from the VC pressure, and it's that they're getting creative with how to sort of paint this picture of hyper growth. And that tends to be a narrative of like, hey, we're going to hire all of these people and we're going to multiply their quota by this, and this is going to be the outcome. And so we need your money. Give that to us today at a higher valuation. And by the way, we're going to sell some of our equity in the process and get nice and rich here. So really, like when this all needs to shake out, like we're kind of already protected and we'll figure this out later, sort of thing. And then we'll fire all the salespeople, blame them, and like, just repeat the process and sort of. So that's kind of like what I think is going on here. There's obviously lots of details and things that play roles there. But let me get your thoughts on like what's going on with quota attainment. How do you think about that? Sort of how do you manage it at Signpost? Yeah, take it away.
So I think it's a three-pronged approach. I don't disagree with your approach at all. Like I 100% believe, look, we need to be at X. Everybody's got to get to Y, but like, can they get to Y? Right? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
can we get to X? I have sat in those meetings, right? I just like you have, and you're going, man, I don't know what I have to do here to get, like, I fundamentally, I cannot get there. So, right. Like it just doesn't happen.
Well, like just because I have 10 people who can hit this number doesn't mean I can have 100 repeating the exact same.
It doesn't.
Like it doesn't work that way. It never works that way. For a little while. There's maybe little segments where, but it breaks down. There's diminishing.
You have to understand business is not linear. This is, I have preached this and preached this and preached this. I don't care. I used to say, you can't Google sheet your way out of this, right? Like it's not linear. I'm great in Excel. It's not linear. It just doesn't, that's not how it works. And you can build your churn numbers in, you can build close rates in, you can connect. And I had a gentleman that I loved him to death. I hired him from a big company in Austin to be a sales manager for me. And he had a day trader series spreadsheet built with all the KPIs, and I'm telling you, rock star level KPIs, right? The guy knew what he was doing, never hit a damn quota in his life. Like he never, I had to fire him because he didn't hit, because he tried to get everything to come in. So like one phase, yes. I believe there's two pieces also. And part of this, I lean into really heavy at Signpost. And I will say, like last month, 80% of our team hit their target last month. We have a small team right now, right? So, you're like, okay, they should. We should have 100% hitting. This month, we will have 100% hitting. Here's what I say too, though. You don't connect the full go-to-market piece. You have to have a strategy around how you're going to drive demand in. Cold call's great. Cold call's great. But there's also got to be some connection in there. Your team will burn out. You will run through the leads. It's going to cost you more somewhere else. Like you either have to have a brand strategy to drive recognition in and name awareness. You have to have a paid strategy. Maybe you're just PPC, man. Maybe you're just bidding on keywords and you're getting demos in. Maybe you have a partner strategy, something there. I really like a revenue organization because I believe that marketing should be accountable to the number. Sales should be accountable to the number. And you know what? CS should be accountable to the number because it's
put
all
everyone
connected.
on revenue.
It's all connected. So my other piece is I am so tired of you telling me why you can't get to your number. Tell me what you need to get to your number. Two completely different statements. So I think over a decade, we have gotten softer and softer and softer and softer, and we have become very much an excuse environment. And so I'm not saying that's the sole driver to not hitting your targets, but you got a VP that complains before he ever gets the number. And when he gets the number, he's going to tell you all the reasons why. Well, they're not giving me salespeople. I can't hire this, and they won't pay for Gong. And if I don't have Gong, what am I going to do? Right? How am I going to? And I don't have the right tools to be able to call coach because everybody's remote, and I can't do it remote, and we can't have an office. Right? Like you go through, and then it goes to the directors, and they mimic that, right? Because they hear that. And then you go to your team and your team mimics that, right? So we have allowed the excuses. Then I go on LinkedIn and guess what? I have validation because I can find someone on LinkedIn that will feel the way I do, right? I'm not saying it's the soul. I am not by far not saying it's the soul, but I really do think it's a trifecta. One, we're doing linear math to get to a goal, and linear math is not how you scale a go-to-market engine, right? The other piece is when we say we have a go-to-market engine, we go to all these conferences and we all spend the money to go stay at the nice hotel and eat steaks at night, right? And say, I'm smarter when I left this. Everybody talks about this go-to-market engine they've built, but they really have not. There's a lack of accountability and execution to owning that, to saying this is a go-to-market engine. It involves all three sides: marketing, sales, customer success, right? Like customer success should be expanding and growing what comes in their way. Sales should hit their number at all cost, and marketing should be fueling it, right? Like but we don't connect it. There's excuses in there. And then you come to the bigger piece of excuses. There's 1,000 reasons on why and I had this conversation recently, begging me for a tool. Okay, I'll get you the tool. Well, now there's excuses why it's not working because maybe we didn't implement the tool correctly or whatever, right? Like just stop, right? Stop. Tell me what needs to change. So that's my perspective, probably a little different than others, but I'm looking at it now from all sides. Right. And I'm like, man, I had those excuses as a CRO too. And you know what? They were excuses. At the end of the day, they were excuses. So that's kind of my three-pronged approach there.
I like it. And I don't know if you agree with this, and there's sort of semantics here. So I know that this could be debated, but I've sort of, gravitated towards saying over the last few years that salespeople really are not generating demand. They're capturing it. And we really need to rely on marketing. And it doesn't mean that cold calling doesn't have an element of demand gen. There is a bit of education that's happening there, but where it really works well is when there's already a sense of familiarity. Yes. And you're sort of like that light is going off in their head when you say you're calling from Signpost. They kind of have already been hit a little bit in the subconscious, at least, with what the brand is, what the problem is, and what they solve. And that's where I find that it works really well. And I really saw that at Aircall because it was the first company I worked at where we had like a full, robust marketing team, and they were actually targeting the leads before we would call them. And so there was a level of like, oh, you're from that. I think I got an email or this, or you guys hosted this event, or I saw you at SaaStr or something like that. And like, that's when I see this thing really work well. Now, then again, selling to the small storefronts, we had no marketing at single platform. So I wouldn't be able to make that statement there. Like we were demand generating there. We
Correct.
were calling them, we were
Correct.
cold pitching them and all that sort of stuff. So, but in the sort of modern realm of this go to market revenue sort of world, I do think that you kind of want to look at it like sales is there to capture that demand, but
Correct.
you want to be sort of sprucing that or sort of, what do you call it when you're sort of juicing the engine, priming the engine ahead
Correct.
of time, right? With the marketing. Yeah.
And I look at marketing a little differently too. I have the benefit of being able to hand choose who I want on my marketing team, right? You don't always get that as a sales leader.
Yeah.
And that what I value in a marketing team is someone who's done sales.
Yep.
And I never understand why, like I've worked with some CMOs that put great slide decks together, but they can't execute anything.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so, or you have sales, you have a friction between sales and marketing. I've been in that role as well. Right. So like my particular preference is a marketing team who I don't even care if you're a marketing coordinator. Have you ever worked as an SDR? Right. Because I would hire that person over. Maybe
Yeah.
you decided that's not the world I want to work in. I am not a good salesperson. I don't want to be an SDR, but you know what it's like to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
So if you're educating, because I also think marketing serves two purposes. They educate the internal team and they're also broadcasting the external voice,
Yeah.
right? So, but if you have a marketing team that doesn't have a sales voice, so your pitch doesn't match your collateral that's going out, and so the collateral going out is one voice, and then you're getting on the phone. I don't understand why it's confusing to us that it doesn't work. I really don't
Yeah.
understand. Like, I could solve that problem for you in about 30 minutes by just going through and looking at LinkedIn resumes and go, okay, this person is a marketing
Yeah.
person that's creating demand and they've never once picked up a phone. That's the
Yeah.
wrong person for this, right?
Yeah.
Or you have a sales leader who doesn't value marketing. A lot of sales guys need to swallow their pride, myself included. When I remember being this guy going, you're in marketing, you don't know what I need to do, right? Look,
Yeah.
shut up and listen and be a teammate and then, appreciate the benefit of things coming in. I just think it goes back to that go-to-market engine. You've got to have a go-to-market engine.
I'm with you. And what's funny about that is like to do sales, you have to learn how to market. Like you can't do sales without having some marketing chops, but to do marketing, you don't really learn how to do sales. Like you can just sort of end up in that. And I agree with you. I've seen this many times, and I think people need to really refine what the profile of a CMO or VP marketing is, because
Great.
what tends to happen is they'll bring someone in, usually who can do some some pay per click, some some SEO, and and they maybe start out in sort of that realm, and then they grow into it, and that's what you're talking about. It's like these people do not know how to sell. They're not the best copywriters. They're going to talk in. They're going to feature dump, and that's going to be the language of your website. But then there's marketers who, maybe did field marketing, and maybe they've spent a lot of time out speaking with prospects and customers. Right. And they're going to have a very different approach to it. And so I think there's a place for those people on marketing teams. Like you need the people who know those different pieces. But yeah, when the leadership of the marketing team really just has no sales chops, it's very obvious in everything that they do. That was kind of what was, I don't want to say enjoyable because it was super stressful, but at Doctor.com, we did not have a marketing team. So I filled those shoes. Like I wrote most of our website copy just because I would look at it and be like, no, this is bad. We need to do it like this. And they would just do it because no one else was doing it. I would come up with our trade show booths, like what we would put on the banner and all that sort of stuff. And it was nice to have control over that. It also was great to go to Aircall and have a full team that did it for us.
Right.
So it goes both ways. But yeah, I'm totally with you. And I do feel strongly that when you take everyone in the company who has some sort of a variable compensation and you just tie it to the revenue target instead of all the tedious, like, well, here's the marketing qualified opportunities and here's the this and the that and the other thing, all of a sudden everyone stops fighting and everyone starts working towards the same goal. Do you do that? I mean, because it blows my mind how many people still disagree with me on that, and they still want the attribution and all this nonsense. And then they have weekly meetings to debate over it. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, none of that matters. Just score the goal, right? Like, score the goal. And that's it.
I would actually think that many of us have tried to be too big, right? So, like, I'll kind of jump back a little bit and then come forward.
Sure.
That CMO for Pepsi is not the same CMO for Signpost.
Yes.
Right. So like you wouldn't hire a Salesforce AE, right? That's doing $700,000 a year on his W-2 to come down and beat the streets and sell at,
Right.
$500 a copy. He's going to be so out of his element. Like there's
Right.
just no way, right?
Maybe
We don't
hire that person for a rebrand, but that's it, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Like there's just, but you got to consider, and when somebody says I can do demand gen, well, demand gen is a broad thing, right?
yeah,
So that's my other push on that is you got to have them connected. And I firmly believe everybody should have a variable piece. I'll go all the way back to the car business. When you put the front desk receptionist on a variable kicker based on how many ups are actually accounted for, magically every up is accounted
yeah,
for, right? Because
yeah,
it doesn't matter how much you give a kicker, that person wants their cash, right? So like at the end of the day, I think sales will always be a much bigger piece. You're going to have to go hunt what you can eat, right? But I think everybody should be interconnected because ultimately everybody's trying to make money, right?
yeah.
I like it when people tell me I don't care anything about money. You wouldn't have the job. Like, come on, you
Yeah,
do
get
care.
out of
You
here.
may not be money driven or money like that may not be your top motivation, but you fundamentally, if for doing your role and doing it more effectively, I would pay you more money, you would take it, right?
Yeah,
Like that's not, so yes, and I think so this is also the path, right? The journey. Sometimes you're racing so fast to fix things, you forget about the alignment. And you forget about, oh, I got to tie this compensation to here because if I did that, I had a conversation with two of my management team members yesterday, and we were exceptionally tired and frustrated, just tired and frustrated. And when you looked at what was the core blocker, it's alignment on those pieces. What's driving everybody's goals?
yeah.
And we've ran so fast in the last 12 months that you're just turning to get things fixed and you forget about that alignment. So I do think to your point, it's kind of shocking how many people don't align, but then it's also not shocking to me because a month seems like a year to me. And then all of a sudden that's flown by and you're like, oh crud, you know what? I'm not even aligned over here. And now you got to take it back.
Yep.
And so, yeah,
Yeah.
people need to focus on that. But I think until you've bumped your head and not done it, you don't really realize how big of a blocker it is for you.
Yeah, great point on CS too. When I went to Aircall, and they had two offices. So I had an office in Paris, office in New York, and I was, coming in to grow out sales there. And there was no CS leader in that office. There was just a marketer, a VP of marketing, who was basically interim overseeing the
Yeah.
sort of that whole operation. And when I joined, we had major conflicts between sales and CS. I mean,
Yep.
to the point that they wouldn't eat lunch together. They were always pissed at each other. It was always something that was going on there. And, I had to dig into it and figure out what was going on. And it wasn't really the people, it was the alignment. It was what you talked about. And so, I'll just give an example there for those who are listening, because I mean, the marketing piece is a good one. If you align them all on revenue, all of a sudden, what happens is they stop fighting about, we created that lead, not you. I know they came and called you back, but we did this first. And like, it's like you're spending all this time arguing about this stuff. If we just align you to the same outcome, like, hey, how about you both get paid when the deal closes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And now you can just focus on getting us to that point instead of like, fighting over who gets the attribution, in the same way that when you score goals or touchdowns, the whole team wins together or the whole team loses together, right? So, and we saw this happen with CS, and this is a common one, so I'll just throw it in here as a little tip for those who are listening. If you have a very clean handoff, your sales team closes the deal, they hand it off to CS, and now it is 100% not their responsibility. They're getting their payment. CS, it's your problem, or onboarding team, it's your problem. If you're you can set it up that way and see if it works. If it doesn't work, then you need to have an overlap of incentive, right? And the sales, and this is how I solved this problem. And it was so freaking easy, but they had been repeating this nightmare for years. And I'm finally just like, okay, well, here's the problem is that you're having this clean handoff and sales is able to basically close any deal under the moon and just give it to them, and it's their problem. Like show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. You're incentivizing them to close any deal, and then you're complaining that they're getting any deal. And so let's just change that. All right. So sales commission, we put a little bit of a delay on it. And so we had to basically see, you would get paid a month late, and we wanted to see, and we would give them a stipend for the first month to cover that. So we would basically see if it onboarded successfully. And so we told the sales team, hey, you can you hand the deal off. It is in their court. However, you are responsible for helping to make sure that it gets through onboarding successfully, or you
Right.
do not get your commission because I'm
Correct.
not going to pay you on a deal that's literally not happy and not paying us. That makes no sense, right? And so once we made that change and you get people aligned, all of the sudden CS is running the onboarding call and they have a little bit of a problem and they go, "Hey Joe on sales, like that, can you hop on this call?" And boom, they're working like a team. And I'm like, whoa, like look at this, right? And
Yes.
you just change the incentive, right? All of a sudden it really works. So yeah, but let's
We did the we did the
sorry, go
same
ahead.
thing recently at Signpost. SMB
Oh, you did.
challenge is getting people to use it, right? Like that's
Mm,
the like dive in, fix habits to get. So half of our salesperson's compensation is connected to usage. We set up
yeah.
a usage KPI. They've got to use it, right? And sales is like, I would have said this as a sales manager. That's BS. It's not my problem. It is your problem.
Yeah.
Like it is because it's our problem. Right,
Bingo.
like that. So it is your problem, and they need to use it, or I'm not going to pay anyway because we don't have a business. So,
Yep.
however you want to do it, I love that, and I think to your point too, there's so many different levers. So
Hmm.
understand what your lever is. Are you
Yeah.
stuck in onboarding? Are you stuck 90 days in? Are you stuck 15 days in? One of the best things we ever did was a very comprehensive churn analysis, breaking all the way down to where the cohort got stuck, how many minutes they were using, what the activities, actions were. And it literally paints a map of, okay, if we all double down on this and everybody's compensation is impacted by this. We build an attachment score model where we're like, look, they have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things for you to get paid. And those are all things that we know the data tells us makes them scalable, repeatable. Also means we have a happy customer, which is really the
Right.
end of the day, right? That it's everybody's connected on the same goal. Nobody's fighting. Sales will
Yeah.
gladly jump on the phone when they've got half their check riding on it.
Yeah. And I actually just had Manny Medina on, founder of Outreach. And I forgot to ask him this question, but because I remember hearing this from many people over the years. I've actually interviewed a few people from their team, and I forgot to ask all of them this, but I've heard it from enough people that I'm pretty sure it's true, which is that they had everyone on the company on a revenue bonus,
Yeah.
marketing, sales, like all of them.
Yep.
And it just like goes to show that it worked really well for them. One thing that worked, I'll throw in here as well, that you sort of reminded me of as you talk about just getting the team aligned on all of this stuff. And I wonder if you do this at Signpost, but actually just showing the entire team like the raw financial statements of the business
Yep.
and letting them actually see like how the cost structure breaks out for their particular role. Like, hey, do you know how much it costs me just to employ you or someone on the team? Like, let me show you how that works, right?
Yep.
And let me show you all. And they're like, oh wow, like, so your cost for me is more than you pay me? And they're like, well, how's that possible? And they're like, well, I have to rent your office space. I have to sign up for Salesforce. I have to pay for your health insurance. I have to do this, that, and the other. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, like I actually wasn't thinking of that. I was just thinking if you pay me 100K and I bring in 100K in business, like we're even Steven. But like, no, 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 no. That's not how it works. And when
No.
you start to break down these numbers and just give them the transparency into that perception, assuming you're hiring the right people who are entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial, that really helps them to understand. And then when you show it to them next month and the month after, and they can see that their efforts or ideas have an impact on changing some of these things, then they
Yep.
start to operate like intrapreneurs, like an entrepreneur within your business. And I think that's the right mindset to have there.
Agree.
Let's talk about AI. And I think there's, since you're, sales and CEO is kind of two worlds here. So one is like, what's your take on AI in sales in terms of like, is it going to replace the SDR? Is it going to supplement a lot of that? And then on the other side, you just said like the greatest challenge is getting people to use your product, right? Like you get them to sign up, you get them through the door, and then you need to get them to use it. And I've sort of come up with this, I don't know if it's a theory or sort of a framework I'm working out in my head, but it's like, I think the history of SaaS has been that we've built a solution to a problem. And then there were sort of these things that sat on top of it and at the bottom of it that we had to figure out. And the top of it was like, how do we acquire the customer and get them to onboard and use the product? And that's where all the humans had to do all this craziness. And then at the bottom, it's like, once we sold you the solution, well, now you need to get your users to use it. And so there's sort of these two things. And now where I'm seeing AI come into play is really those two areas is like, can we create a self-serve product that's doing a lot of marketing and sales automation? And, there's people there to help, but it's sort of like the Slack model where it like is very, sort of self-serving. And then, you kind of need less resources, less overhead at the top, and then the solution is in the middle. And now we're at the bottom, which I think is AI agents, which is like, how do we actually automate the usage of the product? And that's what I'm seeing. And Manny, from Outreach talked a lot about this on the episode I did with him, is he basically said, like, if you're just selling a solution today, like you're going to get crushed. You have to now be thinking about how to build AI that automates the usage of your solution at least as much as possible, because if you don't, someone else is going to do that. And
Right.
then, why would I buy your product that I have to use manually? Like, why am I going to buy a lawnmower if I could buy the robot that just goes out and cuts my grass, right?
Correct.
So, how are you guys thinking about that there, both on the sales, process or marketing side, as well as the actual product?
So I have a higher level thought on this too, because my business is different than others, right? So I'm going to give you my business's perspective, because I
Cool.
really hate it when someone says this is what AI means for everything. It
Yeah.
means different things to every organization, right? And every
Agreed.
consumer. I will push that you have to be solving the right problems, because for about the last 3 to 5 years, every investor has said if you don't have AI somewhere in your product roadmap, you're getting left behind, right?
Hmm.
So again, you're being driven by VC, right? You're being driven by what the multiples will tell you and the value of your business,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. I think that's awesome, right? Create shareholder value. But just building AI into Signpost doesn't solve anything. It doesn't create shareholder value. What's the problem we're trying to solve? I think AI in sales makes us more efficient. I can keep a smaller sales team, and I can utilize AI to help them be more efficient, have more valuable conversations, and actually connect to people that want to be connected with, right? So that's one piece, I think. I think you have to be very careful, because there's also 900 AI tools out there that all say they're going to reinvent your sale. I can take you screenshots today of my inbox completely full with people that are willing to reinvent the way I sell the wagon wheel using AI,
Yeah.
right? AI SDRs, AI AEs, AI, like it doesn't matter. I would say I've also went through a lot of demos that not all of them are created equal either, right? So it depends on what agent they're using, what database they're using, what platform it's built on. Did they build it in 90 days, or did they take 2 years building it, right? Like there's just those are pieces. So what's the problem you're trying to solve in sales? Are you trying to keep a smaller team, be more cost efficient, and the AI agent, you could be 1 rep in cost, but you can get 5 reps production out of it? Are you trying to drive the percentage of your reps up who hit target? Right. And you're going to spend less in marketing because you're going to use this AI SDR who's just going to go after a list. And like it has to be strategic. You can't just
Hmm.
say, we need AI, right? Like, and you're a CRO right now, you're going to your CEO and it's another excuse because he won't spend money on it, but you haven't given him the value proposition. What are you solving? What's the problem? AI as a product for us, we went back to our customers and we said, what's the one thing you want us to solve? Right? What is the one thing? Lower cost option, because in the SMB space,
Hmm.
especially in the home service world where we're at, a lot of these hardworking folks, their income goes up and down. It's very seasonal, right? So if you had an AI offering that I could use in a slower time, and then my live receptionist I can use in busy times, that would be a great solution for me. The other piece is, if you think about SMBs who we serve, everyone uses from spreadsheets through to a service titan for a CRM.
Hmm.
We schedule for them. You literally have reps who they have to, now the company has to buy a license for your rep and do it. It's expensive, right? But you can have AI literally integrate through an API and schedule, and that empowers not only more efficiency for our team, but more efficiency for our customers. So we're
Hmm.
solving that efficiency problem with it, right? The other piece I would say is our customers they know that their customers want text messaging. So it's built into every platform in the world, right? Everybody can text message. But what about using AI to make text messaging smarter? Right? Can you send out an FAQ? Can we send you an invoice? Can we schedule a call? Can we have the conversation on text that my SMB customer is trying to do a job and service their customer? They don't have time to have this text conversation. So just those are analogies, but those are things that how we look at it is, what's the simple problem that we're trying to solve? And it doesn't have to be some really cool, complex AI solution that we can go brag about on a public forum. We would rather have the simple AI solution that actually solves the problem, if that makes sense.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And what I think we've seen over really, I don't know, maybe it's been a year, 6 months, but there was that big wave of all the VCs saying what you said, like you got to get AI into your product. And I think what we saw initially was everyone just did this half-ass thing where they just like kind of had a ChatGPT widget
Yes.
added. And it's
Yeah.
like half the time you're like, why is this even here? Like what it's
Correct.
that like on LinkedIn, there'll be like widgets to like tell you stuff. And you're
Correct.
like, well, it doesn't even really fit into the product. And it seems like you literally just took ChatGPT and like put a button here. It
All you
doesn't
did.
really fit. Yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't really have a purpose. But yeah, when you can find ways, like I think today the phase we're at, and this is going to change, right? It's going to evolve.
Correct.
The capabilities of AI, people like to get into the debates of like, is it going to be better than human? Like yes, it will in certain
Yeah.
ways, and over time, like of course it will. But where we're at today, I think, is looking at the areas that are very repeatable, where
Correct.
you're sharing information in a very repeatable way, whether that's on the support side or on the CS side, or even on the sales side, even with AI SDR. I've been working with, or I interviewed the CEO of AI SDR on here, and I've been keeping in touch with him because I'm very curious to learn from him on what's been going on. And his take on it is, first of all, very humble, very honest, not a full of shit kind of guy, not a kind of guy who's like just painting it to be this perfect solution. Like he's really, truly trying to figure out how it works and who it works for. And what he's found so far is exactly what I would expect the conclusion to be for him, which is that you cannot use an AI SDR to figure out outbound. You cannot use an AI SDR for highly complex outbound. But if you have something that is so figured out and so repeatable and so proven, and your main problem is you're just paying a lot of money for humans to keep running that motion, well, then I can replicate most of that, right?
Correct.
And I'm like, okay, that sounds honest and fair and makes a ton of sense.
It's a realistic solution to a problem, right?
Yes.
That's his.
Bingo.
Yes, I could not agree
Bingo.
more.
Bingo.
Could not agree
And
more.
so, he's where he sort of says is he's like, dude, like today, basically, we can replace like the average transactional SDR.
Yes.
That's it,
Yes.
right? But that
Correct.
doesn't mean that like most salespeople are just getting replaced today, all this sort of stuff. And it's also not as simple as like, does it mean as it gets better, it will replace everyone? Because there's converging forces. As it gets better, there's Google trying to block you from using it. There's prospects
Yes.
trying to, block it and shadow ban it and all this stuff. So there's always going to just be like these different layers of things coming at you. But I do think that I agree with Manny in the sense that we need to be thinking about how to take AI agents and use it to supplement parts of the work that we do,
Yes.
or products and stuff like that. So it sounds like that's sort of what you're
It's a
thinking
tool
about.
for efficiency. It is
Yeah.
absolutely. So our internal team uses it for frameworks. We're not putting out AI driven content, but we absolutely are using AI to come up with a content strategy, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
why would I have my one person team sitting over here spending 7 days trying to beat their head against the wall to come up with a content strategy
Yeah.
when I have a very relative chat GPT content strategy? I would rather have them putting all their energy into writing valuable content, right? Like those
Right.
are the uses I believe that AI is super powerful. Like you're giving that person so much time back and letting them actually do what they're good at, and that is
Yeah.
putting meaningful content out.
Yeah. And I think it's just a matter of time before we get to the point where people actually prefer to talk to an AI for certain things
I
because the
agree.
confidence level will go up. In
Correct.
the same way that I do not Google things anymore. Like
Right.
unless I'm
I don't
looking for
either.
a website, like maybe I'll try to find it on Google, but I'm going to ChatGPT, I'm asking it a
Correct.
question and I'm having a little conversation with it just because it works well. And it's become trustworthy, at least in certain regards, right? In certain regards, you may be like, this thing has no clue what it's talking about. But yeah.
I think the
So
more information you put into it, that's the great thing about a learning model, right? Like I have a business
yeah.
analyst side of my chat GPT that I upload spreadsheets. I say, hey, I'm looking at this. I'm looking at call data and our workforce management piece. Can you tell me if this makes sense? And you're having a really because it's X's and Y's, right? You're not asking for emotional guidance. You're asking for like, look, am I looking at this data correctly? Those are all great uses of AI. It's solving a problem.
It's kind of like having, like the other day I had to read a contract. I love it for this. I'll copy and paste the entire contract and be like,
Yes,
tell me anything that I should be redlining or concerned about. Or,
absolutely.
even though I'll read the thing, like it's so nice. It's
The
like
second set of
having,
eyes. It's a
yeah,
second set of eyes. It's
yeah.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm using it for all that stuff. All right, cool. Let's jump into the juicy stuff here. I want to get just share with me. I mean, what has it been like? You went from, obviously sales to VP sales to CRO, all that stuff. Like I know that journey inside and out, but you're going to being a CEO. what was, first of all, maybe if you want to just give me like, how the hell did you land that job? I mean, did you just see a job posting? Did they approach
Nope.
you? Like, how does that even happen?
Yeah. I still to this day don't know how they found me. It was a recommendation. Someone said, you need to call Luke. He's the one that can fix this. I really never found out who was the one that told this, bank and VC organization, recruiter, or whoever it was, right?
I figured that much. I figured you weren't just browsing for
No,
CEO jobs on
no.
like monster.com.
I wouldn't have. I'm just going to tell you right now, anybody in the right mind wouldn't have taken this role, right? Like at the end of the day, there was one reason I took it. I started meeting people that were in the business. I looked at why it was so unsuccessful over time, right? And no, this is no shade or shot at any previous management or anything, because everybody who sits in the seat at a current time has different agendas, right? The agenda that was given to me was, hey, we've got something that's valuable here. There's no shareholder value. We need a new go-to-market, and that's what we want you to do. So I would take my charter. Any comment I would give on Signpost would be my charter, right? And so I looked at it.
Can you give me just a little bit of background, like
Sure.
when they were founded, what they raised,
Yep.
and just the big milestones of what led up to that?
So Signpost has been around 10 years, and I will keep from giving you the exact amount of money
That's
that
fine.
has been invested. I will tell you why here in a second as well, though. It has had a substantial amount of money put in over 10
So they
years.
were growth at all cost,
Growth at all
for sure.
cost.
Yeah.
Multiple really well-known VCs have put a sizable amount of money into the business. And I will tell you, if I was to write a book about it, original founder had a great thought process, right? Great what he was trying to solve. If you talk to the actual humans that are in the business,
Hmm.
all they took out of it was every quarter we were doing things to get another round of fundraising. Right? It was never about solving for the customer. It was about, and I was not involved, so I'm giving third person, right?
Yeah.
But when I start interviewing every single human, they're like, "No, what are we going to do about fundraising?" I'm like, "Well, we're not going to fundraise. Well, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to focus on the customer. We're going to sell. We're going to do you have another round of fundraising? No, I don't. Right? The business is at a place now. It's not investable. We
They
need
became
to
addicted to it.
we need to absolutely solve for the customer. Addicted to it is dead on. It was the heroin, right?
Yeah.
So what happened is also pieces of the business have been sold off over time. And so what you have as a shell of Signpost is not what you thought it was 10 years ago. The shell of Signpost today is a live receptionist contact center, is how they presented it to me, right? Which no one wants a contact center. Everybody's like, that's the most unsexy thing I've ever, like, why would I run a contact center? They're hard from an OpEx perspective because you have humans you have to pay. You have all these humans you have to employ to cover shifts and call spikes and volumes. And then how do you sell a contact center to customers, right? I almost feel like and I don't remember I think it was Song of the South when I was a little kid, where the rabbit was saying, please don't throw me into that briar patch, because he wanted to be thrown in the briar patch over there. I was kind of like, man, you really shouldn't give me this job. I don't know. And I'm in the back of my mind, I'm like, I actually think we can crush this. I have a team in my mind
But
that
that's the best way to get it, right? Because
correct.
when you're begging for something, they're
Yeah,
going to be down your neck every step of the way. But when they have to beg
correct.
you to come do it, it's a better scenario.
Correct. And from a compensation perspective, I make half from a W-2 perspective that I've made as a CRO. So like everybody expects like, oh, you're the CEO, you're making all this money. I'm just telling you flat out, I make half of what I've made as a CRO.
So what's
right?
the
So
incentive for you? Is there upside to fix the business?
no, it's not about, so here's the thing. It's not about the paycheck for me at the end of the day. It's always about money. Yes, everybody wants to make money. I'm a capitalist through and through. I want to make money. What's unique about this is I passionately believe we are building something of value, right? So the what everybody thinks is this really unsexy deal, which is just answering communications, right? No one's in Signpost history really done one thing. And what we do is help the customer meet their customers where they are. Is that an Angie lead? Is that a website lead? Is that a text message? Or is that a phone call? Right? Pretty simple. I'm not doing website widgets. I'm not doing PPC and LSAs and all this. Like, I'm not driving leads into your bit. I'm saying that I'm going to rock it for you so you can rock it for your customer. Right? Like, that's all I'm doing. I'm just the basic thing. But when you start talking to all these customers, they're spending tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in leads, and they can't answer them.
Yeah.
And they can't answer the calls. They can't text message. They can't keep up, right? So that's why I took the role, and that's why today I have as much energy as when I first took the role. It has been an uphill battle. There are all kinds of opportunities in the business, but at the end of the day, I know that I am standing behind something that actually is of value to my customers. And I don't know that you always get that in life. It will not, I'm not going to be the most profitable business in the world. I'm not going to be $1 billion business. You're never going to see me at the New York Stock Exchange being this guy who's, exited Signpost into the stratosphere, right? It's just not built to be that kind of business.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this, you're going to have tens of thousands of customers from the Signpost perspective that we've impacted in a very positive way. And at this point in my career, that means more to me than the hope, maybe if come, that my equity will be worth something one day.
Got it. Okay, so there is still an equity component. So
Absolutely.
That's the carrot
Absolutely.
on the stick. Is it owned by private equity today? Was it bought out, or who owns the thing today?
So
Is it just still
have
the investors holding the bag, basically?
investors in banks. So there's bank debt like other businesses, right? And there's then myself who's a piece of the business, and then we have a VC or private equity money as well.
Got it.
Primarily down to one private equity firm that is still in the game, still
That's
after all
usually
this
how
time.
it ends up, right?
Still in the game.
Because
Yes.
that's sort of certain private equity. My understanding is that's kind of their model. Not all of
Correct.
them, but they will focus on those later stage. They kind of look for a fire sale opportunity on some of this stuff, right? And it's actually okay. So that's interesting, and I understand why I misunderstood your question earlier, because I didn't realize you guys sort of evolved into this sort of contact center. It's actually quite similar to what my buddy is running at DearDoc for doctors.
Nice.
They're doing a lot of the sort of answering of the phones and the text chatting and stuff, and so
It's
so
the
that's what you're
pipeline to
doing.
the business.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if you look at it's the pipeline, but here's the problem. You can't build cool product out of it. I'm not building
He
anything.
started as like just a chat widget,
Yes.
but then he saw that they really needed someone to do the talking,
Correct.
and that's where he's really had a bunch of success. So that makes a lot of sense. Cool. So what are the plans now? I mean, you've been doing this for how long now?
This is a year this month, actually. So we've been 12
Oh,
months in the game.
congrats. Well, happy
Yes.
anniversary.
Yeah.
And what's the game plan for 2025? Are you guys hiring people or what?
So we are focused on growth, right? That we have to be able to show more value to more customers. And so when you look at the balance, we've taken a risk in 2025 and said, we got to grow. We have to grow, right? And the growth can't not return. Right. So we have to be really good at what we do. So we're growing the level that we can actually serve our customers on the back end side of things, both in the contact center and from a technology perspective. But we're also growing on our sales side. And we're looking for a certain type of human to join our world. And it's someone that gets the old school way of selling. It's someone that gets value. It's someone that wants to work on education. But I think also we make all of our decisions internally based on our core values as well, right? And those core values are bigger to me when you bring a salesperson in, because that salesperson stays and they understand and they have the same passion we do about taking care of the customer. So we're not growing at all cost like I've done in the past, right? You just like, look, I need 35 butts. Period.
Yeah.
I just need 35 butts in the seats. What we're doing is really being very strategic, very methodical, and talking to folks who want to be a part of maybe something that's a little different, right? Like you can go to your bigger corporation, or you could go do the hoorahs and you could have a beer fridge in your office and you could do all the cool stuff, right? Or you could come be a part of something meaningful and professionally develop and grow and really learn as you're doing it. And that's the approach we're taking. But we are scaling and we're growing this year. We're putting our foot down on the gas and going.
Awesome. I love it. Are you guys still in that same office that we used to sublease? No.
No, so we are completely remote. And then
Oh,
we have
nice.
switched this year. We actually have a WeWork office space where our sales team is live in Austin. So any
Nice.
hiring that we would do in Austin. I am very much, and I get a lot of pushback on this, but I am very much an in-office human. I have a phenomenal home office, which you're seeing today because of my travel. But I love the energy of being in the office. I love
Yeah,
being able to
I do too.
collaborate. So I don't think we'll ever get to a world where it's not hybrid, right? I think there always needs to be a hybrid component, but I fundamentally believe you're missing out if you don't have that human to human share.
100%. I do think there's a place and role and I think it's good if we have some companies that are fully remote and they can offer
Yep.
that to the people who need it. It's a trade-off. You're going to miss out on a lot of
Correct.
fun stuff. There's things that are going to move slower and all that sort of stuff. But if you're at a phase in your life where you're trying to have kids do all this, like,
Yeah,
cool. Like
it's a big deal.
I like that there could be both options. But yeah, we used to, I was joking because when I was at Doctor.com, we were so bootstrapped. We were the opposite of growth at all cost. And what was funny about that was that we always ended up subleasing our offices from growth at all cost companies who had overextended themselves and signed these crazy leases. And we would come in there. So we were constantly moving because we would just look for these deals where companies were like, we just fired a bunch of people and we've got all this space and we don't know what to do with it. Do you want to rent it? And our CEO would lowball them and we'd get in there for nice and cheap and stuff. So we were at one point working out of the Bank of America tower in Bryant Park for like dirt cheap on this tech company that had this ridiculous office. They had one of the soundproof, conference rooms where you can have global communications and stuff. And we were paying like pennies on the dollar for it. But yeah, it's always funny to see that. So, hey man, this was a great chat. Everything here I agree with, and you crushed it out of the park. You hit the nail on the head with, especially, I mean, just the growth at all cost stuff. I mean, the way you just told that story of what has happened to Signpost is really what I've been preaching about a lot on this podcast, about trying to avoid that stuff, and definitely try to avoid getting to a place where your team is thinking like, when's the next round of funding? Like, if they're programmed to think that that's what we're aiming for, like something's very, very, very wrong. So
we ignored all the growth levers. You ignored churn. You ignored sales process. You ignored because you were just going to get another round of fundraising.
Because it's all about selling secondary.
Yes, correct.
That's all it is. Yeah, it's a game. It's a game about selling secondary, bloating the bag, passing it to the next person. The problem with that is it doesn't take into account the employees, the leaders, the customers, which are supposed to be the most important people in a business. So it's a pleasure to speak with you. A pleasure to see that you are leading them back down the right road, and I'm very happy for you. And we'll have to keep in touch. Everyone can follow you on LinkedIn. Check out signpost.com. I imagine you have your jobs posted and everything up there as well. And I've also got your Twitter or X I've posted down here it'll be in the show notes. But we'll have to catch up again sometime. I've learned a lot and this was a great time. So thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Collin. I really appreciate it.
Likewise. We'll talk soon.